Oh, hello. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I was looking over this way and not this way. So, obviously I can't see you because I don't have eyes that point in that direction. Fortunately, in a recent one shot, I played a character that could see in that direction and every direction. Yes, I played a beholder. Not an actual beholder, I played a warlock. But thanks to the true polymorph spell, I was able to play a beholder. Now, this video is a little bit confusing to plan out because I'm doing two series. I do one series called Practical Builds, where I talk about characters that I have actually played, and this is based on a character that I have actually played. I'm also doing another series where I'm discussing what possibly the most powerful spell in D&D is, because I'm no longer convinced it's Wish. I think the consensus is that Wish is the most powerful spell in D&D, but I think it might not be. And there were a few contenders that I figured might be more powerful than Wish, and one of them was Prismatic Wall, which I did a video for. I'll link it up above. True Polymorph is another one I think might be more powerful than Wish, so I kind of wanted to do a True Polymorph video for both Practical Builds as well as the most powerful spell in D&D series, so I was considered doing two different videos, and I thought that doesn't really make sense. Might as well, mush them together. So we're having one video here where we're going to discuss True Polymorph. I'm going to discuss the build I played and the results of that session. This will be just one possible application of the True Polymorph spell, of course. But, that's probably more experience than a lot of people who talk about True Polymorph have. So at least I will provide some actual play experience to the discussion. Now, this was a real treat because, I love the Beholder. The Beholder is such a cool monster. I have never had a chance to play one before. So this was my first chance of ever playing a Beholder, and it was everything I could have hoped for. It really was. Now, interestingly, this is months after I've actually played this character. I came across this Reddit post saying, "How do you handle the updated True Polymorph? It is written to be a lot less of a Swiss Army knife than before. I personally don't like it at all, but I doubt my opinion is universal. What do you guys think?" And they ran a poll. Most people say they play it exactly as written in the 2024 rules, but nevertheless, we have some people who think the spell's gotten a lot worse. So if it's gotten a lot worse, how can it possibly be better than Wish? So let's go through that. Now, there is no way I can bring up the entire text of the True Polymorph spell, either the legacy version or the updated version, without it being really tiny on your screen, because it is a big, long, complicated spell. But I'll put it up anyways. This is the legacy version, and I will go over my notes that tell us what it does. So this is a legacy spell. You can see the legacy tag there beside True Polymorph. And basically the way it works is you choose one creature or non-magical object within 30 feet of you, and you cast a spell, and you turn it into another creature or object. So you can turn a dragon into a rock, or you can turn a rock into a dragon, or you can turn the 2014 lousy monk into a dragon. If the target doesn't want to be polymorphed, it gets a wisdom saving throw, or nothing happens. And so that's generally not the way I would use this spell unless I knew the enemy was out of legendary resistances and they didn't have a good wisdom saving throw. Otherwise, I'm not risking a 9th level spell on they make a save and nothing happens. You maintain concentration for an hour. You can see duration, 1 hour concentration is misleading. That's not the actual duration of the spell. That's the duration of your concentration. Because if you maintain the spell for 1 hour using your concentration, then it continues without your concentration forever, potentially. Here's what can end the spell. So if you lose your concentration during that 1 hour, the spell ends. The spell ended if the object fell to 0 hit points or died, or, had a dispel magic or anti-magic field or anything like that. And in theory, the spell can last forever. Now, there are 3 sets of rules for this spell. You can see it says creature into creature, object into creature, and creature into object. So 3 sets of rules. The smallest one is creature into object. So let's talk about that one first. If you turn a creature into an object, this is again the legacy version, the target, along with its equipment, turn into an object no larger than the target. It has the statistics of the object. And since objects technically do have an armor class and hit points, if you break the object, it would turn back. Full hit points and all, having no memory of being transformed. Now, if we look at object into creature, so I'll bring that a little closer to the middle. So you pick the object, cast a spell at it, and then you pick a creature that has a challenge rating of 9 or lower that is no larger than the object, and decide what actions it takes, at least until the concentration phase of your spell ends. Because once that happens, the DM takes control of the creature from you, and then they can do whatever they want with it. So it's no longer your creature to command. If it falls to 0 hit points, it turns back into an object. So your big rock, you turn it into a dragon. The dragon follows your commands for the 1 hour. Then after the hour is done, the dragon is now independent. If the dragon drops to 0 hit points, it's a rock again. That's how that works. Now here's the big one, creature into creature. So here's how this works. All right, so if you turn a creature into another creature, you could choose to turn them into any creature with a challenge rating equal or lower than the target of the spell. Or if they don't have a challenge rating because they're a player character, then you use their level. Their stat block is completely replaced by the new creature, except a couple of things. It can't speak or cast spells or take any actions that requires hands or speech. And this is the caveat, unless the new form could do so. So if you turn a creature into a creature that can speak and cast spells, you can still speak and cast spells of the creature you turn them into. If the new form had legendary or layer actions, they couldn't use them, and their equipment merged into their new form. And to revert them to their original form, it was just like the regular polymorph spell. You reduce the new form to 0 hit points, and then they reverted. And they had whatever hit points they had before, plus damage could carry over, or it could be ended by dispelling magic on them, or something like that. They end up in an anti-magic field, etc. Okay, so that is the old version of the spell. Let's talk about the 2024 version. So the 2024 version is up on your screen. You can see no legacy tag this time. And just from a quick viewing, you'll notice it looks pretty much the same, right? You got your creature into creature, object into creature, creature into object, and the vast majority of it is exactly the same. Like if we look at creature into object, it's word for word. There's no changes. It gets the statistics of the object, and if you destroy the object, it reverts, and it doesn't remember anything. Exactly the same. Object into creature. Also, no changes. So the only changes are for creature into a creature. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. And going over this with a fine-tooth comb, I have noticed 3 changes. 3 pretty big changes. All right, so here is the first big change. Instead of switching to the hit points of the new form, the target gets temporary hit points equal to the hit points of that form. And this is a change from the Polymorph spell. So if you're thinking of the 4th level spell Polymorph, you get temporary hit points now. And if you lose all those temporary hit points, you revert to your original form. That's not here. Read this. It doesn't say that. If you deplete the temporary hit points here, they stay polymorphed. They are still polymorphed. They just have their own hit points, and their own hit points go down, but they still are in that new form. The polymorph lasts until it's dispelled or they die. I mean, you can end the spell too. You have the ability to end any spell that you cast, but the temporary hit points no longer matter for the duration of the spell. And that's a huge change. Now, I'm not sure if it's better or if it's worse. I mean, it makes True Polymorph just a whole lot harder to get rid of now. And if I turn my enemy into a rat, I mean, that's great because I can just kill the rat. Now, that rat will have an incredible amount of hit points, but it's still a rat, right? So I'm not going to have trouble taking it out, right? It can nip at me while I bang on it and go, why isn't this rat dying? But eventually it will die. That's way more powerful than the old version. On the other hand, if it is a friendly polymorph, so it's on myself or on an ally, well, they get to stay in their new form more easily, right? Because if they lose all the temporary hit points, they go into their regular hit points and they're still polymorphed. Is that better or not? It depends. I mean, one big thing is you lose all your temporary hit points when you complete a long rest. So if I turn you into a dragon, you have all these temporary hit points for me polymorphing you into a dragon, you complete a long rest, well, you're still a dragon, but you don't have any temporary hit points anymore. You can get new temporary hit points, but yeah, you can't get those ones anymore. Also, you can't be healed, or your temporary hit points can't be healed, right? They just go down until they're gone. Another thing about temporary hit points is they don't stack, right? So if you have an ally who can give temporary hit points out, well, you've got hundreds of temporary hit points from being polymorphed, so you're not going to benefit from that. There's also this weird interaction with creatures that reduce your maximum hit points when they attack you. Things like wraiths and stuff have stuff like that. Vampires too. So they do damage, and then your hit points, maximum hit points, is reduced by the amount of damage you took. Well, if you have temporary hit points, that really sucks. Because let's say they do 10 points of damage, just to make the math easy. Well, then you take 10 hit points off your temporary hit points, and then you reduce your maximum hit points by 10 hit points. And assuming you were at maximum hit points, you basically take the damage twice. That kind of sucks. But you do keep that form more consistently. And I think if it is a friendly polymorph, you're probably not just polymorphing them for the hit points. You're also probably polymorphing them into a form that is as or more powerful than their original form. In which case, that's actually a benefit to not revert when you lose all the temporary hit points. So I think it's a little bit tomato, right? Like, I'm not sure which one is better. Now, the second big change is definitely a nerf. No question, if we're talking about friendly polymorphing, and this would only ever come up with friendly polymorphing, and that is, it no longer says that you lose speech and spells unless the creature has the ability to do it itself. Now you just lose the ability to speak and cast spells, period. So if you transform somebody into a form that has spell casting, it cannot use spell casting. And if you remember that Reddit post I showed, that's exactly what they were complaining about, was that there's all this versatility in being able to polymorph someone into something that can cast spells, and then it can cast those spells because the creature is capable of casting them. But you can no longer do that with True Polymorph. So that is a nerf. I mean, there's no question about it. But there is a third change here. All right? And the third change is not a nerf. It is a buff. And if we look at the text of this spell, and we go through it, and we look at the text of the 2014 spell, and we go through it, we will not see the buff there. This is where you will find the buff to the True Polymorph spell, in the Monster Manual. So in the introduction chapter of the 2014 Monster Manual, you will find this entry on legendary creatures. And I have bolded the important text. If a creature assumes the form of a legendary creature, such as through a spell, it doesn't gain that form's legendary actions, layer actions, or regional effects. So when I was talking about the legacy version of the spell, I mentioned that you couldn't take legendary actions or layer actions, though that is not written in the spell. It exists nowhere in the spell that says you can't do those things. It exists in the Monster Manual, the 2014 Monster Manual, that says you can't do those things. This entry on legendary creatures does not exist in the 2024 Monster Manual. So it no longer exists in the rules. This is no longer a rule. This is an outdated rule. That means if you true polymorph somebody into a creature that has legendary actions, it gets the legendary actions. And that is a massive, massive buff, depending on the legendary actions of the creature. Because when I discovered this, it got me really excited, and I started to shop. And I was signed up for a 17th level one-shot, and the character I normally would play in that one-shot, there was a reason why it wasn't going to work this time around. So I was thinking about other kinds of characters I might play for that one-shot, and I thought, let's make a character based around True Polymorph. So something that has True Polymorph, cast its True Polymorph at the start of the session, and then I'll see how much of the session I can play as a different creature, and a cool creature, and we'll see how it goes. And I thought maybe some like an adult gold dragon. So what I did is I started to go through, I was looking at challenge rating 17 first because I was 17th level, so I couldn't go above that. So I was looking at 17 or lower, and I figured I would just keep shopping until I found the creature that I wanted to play. And do you know what I found? Legendary actions now, there are a lot of them are spells. So I looked at the gold dragon, the adult gold dragon, second level guiding light as a legendary. Adult red dragon, scorching ray, or second level command as legendary actions. The adult silver dragon, hold monster as a legendary action. Adult blue dragon, shatter as a legendary action. These are great legendary actions, but I wouldn't be able to take them. So it kind of defeats the point of playing a character now that I can actually use legendary actions. I also noticed that the shape-shifting ability of metallic dragons that didn't used to be a spell is now a special version of the shape change spell. So you wouldn't be able to do that either. And I started working my way down the challenge ratings. So I looked at all the 17s, then I looked at the 16s, and then I looked at all the 15s, and I started to figure maybe this idea wasn't all that great. The best thing I came across was the Death Knight. The Death Knight looked pretty good. Then I decided to be thorough, and I started looking at the 14 challenge ratings. And then I started looking at the 13 challenge ratings, and that is when I looked at the Beholder. And as I went through the stat block of the Beholder, it just started to check off every box of what I was looking for. And I was at the point where I figured, even if I find a challenge rating 13 creature, it's just going to be so weak that I'm not going to want to use it as my true polymorph option. But boy, I looked at the Beholder and I thought, this is really good. Like, really good. So armor class is 18. That's not great, but it's not terrible. Hit points, 190. So I'd get 190 temporary hit points. Gotta be honest, I was hoping for more. But you know what? 190 temporary hit points isn't bad. Here is the stuff that really jumped out to me, though. So first, we have the movement and 40-foot hover speed. So, nice and versatile there. You gotta like that. Of course, all the attacks for this creature are ranged. 120-foot range on all attacks. So it's not even like your movement speed is that important. But I figured being able to fly and hover would be good. Especially if we're fighting anything that can't fly, then you just hover above it and blast it to hell. Second, right here, 3 legendary resistances. Let's go! Obviously, I'm big on that because I like to make my saving throws. Then we have the multi-attack action. So we use eye rays 3 times on our turns. So that's 3 rays. So 3 attacks, basically. They're not real attacks because you're not making an attack roll. You roll 3 dice, 3d10s, determine which eye rays you use randomly, and then you choose targets for each of those eye rays, which might be the same target 3 times. In fact, for me, it usually was. And you just eye ray, right? And it's pretty effective. But here's the real kicker, and so the reason why the Beholder is way more powerful to true polymorph into in 2024, it is the legendary actions. You got two options. You got Chomp, you make 2 bite attacks, and your bite attacks are terrible, and you're probably not next to your enemies anyway. Or Glare, you use Eye Rays. Now that's not 3 Eye Rays, that's 1 Eye Ray. But you have 3 legendary actions. So you have multi-attack, 3 Eye Rays, legendary actions, 3 Eye Rays. So that is 6 Eye Rays every round. 6 attacks, basically. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the bonus action. You get an anti-magic cone. 150-foot anti-magic cone. And 150 feet is big for a cone. Like, really, really big for a cone. In fact, if you are on a battle map, put up a cone with 150-foot range and just look near the end of the cone how big it is. Because what happens is, and this happened, you get creatures that you know can cast spells, and you throw them in that really big, beefy area of your anti-magic cone, and it's way too big for them to get out of it. And they can't, it's not like they can teleport out of it, so they're stuck there, and they can't cast spells. That's really nice. Now, I should mention, of course, that you can't cast spells at them or use Eye Rays at them, but here's the thing about this beautiful anti-magic cone now, and this was not the case with the 2014 Beholder. You can do the anti-magic cone as a bonus action, and it lasts until the start of your next turn. So what you do is you multi-attack, blast, 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 and you can anti-magic cone, and then at the start of your next turn it goes down, and then you can blast, blast, blast again. Now what that means is you have to use your legendary action Eye Rays on someone else if you are blasting the person in your anti-magic cone. But what it does do is it allows you to anti-magic cone the enemy spellcaster and blast away at the non-spellcaster enemy with all your Eye Rays, which is what I would normally do. What I was paranoid, of course, of being Dispel Magic, so anytime I thought something might have Dispel Magic, anti-magic on it. Now, we'll be coming back to the Beholder stat block, but first I want to show you the character that I played. Largely because, look at what D&D Beyond gives you an option to put on your thing. I was able to have a little Beholder animation around my character token. I love that. A great old one patron, Warlock, 17th level, and have a character sheet here, and I never used it in the session because I was never reverted back to my Warlock form. Nevertheless, I will link this character sheet in the video description, and I think if I had been reverted to my Warlock form through a Dispel Magic or something like that, would have been just fine. I mean, I still would have been a 17th level Warlock, I just wouldn't have my 9th level spell anymore. Oh, and here's a benefit I didn't even think about going in, but check out this initiative. Plus 12. I was winning most initiatives with this character. That's really nice. The Beholder happens to be one of those creatures that gets twice its proficiency bonus as an addition to its initiative score. So that was great. I was winning more initiatives than anybody else. Here was my main concern. I had one concern about playing the Beholder, and that's the save DCs. All right, so like I mentioned, your Eye Rays, they don't actually do attacks. They target creatures, and the creature makes a saving throw. And the saving throw DC on all of these is 16. Now, 16 isn't a bad DC, depending on your level. At 17th level, it's on the low side, right? I would expect DCs to be 18 or 19 by 17th level, probably 19. So 16 was low, so I figured creatures are just going to make their saving throws against everything, and it's not going to be that great, right? That's was my concern, going in the back of my head. And then I was thinking, well, as long as creatures don't have a plus 15 on their saving throw, they'll fail some of the time, right? And then I'm like, I'm making 6 Eye Ray shots every round. They don't have to fail 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2. I mean, if they fail 1, something bad is going to happen to them. So if I'm playing a spellcaster and I have a DC of 16, and I'm casting spells with saving throws, it's going to be a problem. But if I was playing a spellcaster who could cast 6 spells a round and had a DC 16, and I didn't have spell slots, every spell was at will, then it would be pretty darn good. And yes, creatures made their saving throws against these eye rays most of the time. I don't have an exact log, but more often than not, they made their saving throw. But they did not make them all the time. And here's a nice thing. The eye rays tend to have partial effects if they make their saving throw. I mean, the big one is the death ray. So if you roll a 10, you get the death ray. This one is really nice. 10d10 necrotic damage. You make your saving throw, you take half damage. Now, 10d10 is an average of 55 damage, which would be good damage on its own. They make their save 27 damage. Now, if I'm just doing 27 damage around at 17th level, I'm not doing very well. But that's 1/6 of what I do, right? And the death ray isn't the only one that does partial damage on a successful save. In fact, 5 of the 10 eye rays do damage and do half damage on a successful save. Now, the death ray does the most damage, but it adds up. It adds up, right? You're doing 6 rays. If 3 of them are doing damage, and it's half damage for all of them, it ends up being, I'm guessing I did about 50 points of damage around. And that is on top of creatures failing 1 or 2 saves each round, in which case they either ate up their legendary resistances more quickly than if I was playing a spellcaster, or they were affected. And they might be affected by a paralyzing ray that paralyzes them. They might have been affected by a slowing ray that effectively gives them the effects of a slow spell. They might get restrained by my telekinetic ray, and then I can move them around. They might go unconscious from my sleep ray. It's good stuff. Petrification ray, they go restrained. If they fail again, they would be petrified. These are the non-damaging effects. So you get really nice effects if you don't roll damage, but they fail their save. Then something really bad happens to them. And a lot of the ones that do damage do something else if they fail as well. Like the charm ray does damage, but it also inflicts the charm condition if they fail. And I think almost everything I fought was immune to charm. Almost everything I fought was immune to frightened, so the fear ray wasn't all that good either. But again, I was just rolling so many rays, once in a while I'd get a ray that didn't work. And it's not like the death ray is a million times better than all the other ones. The disintegration ray does 8d8 force damage, save for half. And that's 36 damage, or save for 18. And I found a lot of these rays were good outside of combat. Wanted to grab something? Well, I don't have hands, but I got a telekinetic ray. We need a pass wall spell? Well, good thing I've got a disintegration ray. And so was the character effective in the one-shot? Yes, very, very effective. And it wasn't a character I had to build for True Polymorph. This is a character you could just play. I'm a warlock. And you take the same build decisions you would make if you were playing a warlock that wasn't going to do this at level 17. The only thing that you need to do with the build is when you get to level 17 and you pick your Mystic Arcanum, you pick True Polymorph. And boom, there, you're a beholder. Or whatever you want it to be. And if you were to, say, complete a long rest and now you've got no temporary hit points anymore, you could end the spell, because you can do that at will, and then cast it on yourself again, and then you got the temporary hit points again. So you can do it every day if you want, and you can cast every day. And I should mention that at the end of our session, I still had temporary hit points. In fact, I had like half the temporary hit points I started with. Now, that is just an anecdote. I played one time, one session. Wasn't an easy session, but a lot of people who talk about True Polymorph have not played with it. All right, so at least I have one session of experience where I did this. As for playing a beholder in a session of D&D, highly recommend. Man, that was fun. So that brings us back to our original question. Is True Polymorph the most powerful spell in the game? Well, I've only looked at 2 spells so far. I've looked at Prismatic Wall and True Polymorph. Now keep in mind I only used one possible application of True Polymorph in play. There's still turning an ally into a powerful creature, turning an enemy into a rock or something like that, or a slug, turning a rock into a challenge 9 rating creature under your control. All this stuff True Polymorph could do before, right? And it can still do it now. And for that reason, it is very versatile, though there are certain applications of it that I find a lot more powerful than others. Turning an enemy into an object or turning an enemy into another creature is not that great because they get the saving throw and nothing happens if they succeed. Because you're at a level where you just cannot count on enemies failing their saving throws. So I'm not sure that, I'm glad it's there, but I'm not sure that application is very good most of the time. Turning an object into a creature, I have done this in game, not since the 2024 rules, but I've done it in the old version of the rules, and it worked the same. And it's okay. The thing is a challenge rating 9 creature at this level isn't that great, right? So, yeah, I'm not one of the more powerful uses of this spell. The most powerful use of this spell is turning yourself or an ally into a powerful creature. Are you more powerful now than you used to be because you get legendary actions even though you don't get spellcasting? I think so. It was not as clear-cut as I originally thought, because once I went through the Monster Manual and I noticed how much legendary action is spellcasting, I'm not totally convinced it's a home run here, but I would say I think it's more powerful just because there are the occasional options for legendary actions that you just didn't have before. But is it more powerful than Prismatic Wall? Well, as it happens, the DM who ran the session for which I played a Beholder ran a session the following month, and we were 18th level. And I played the build I normally play, and they used Prismatic Wall, and it wrecked his final encounter. Here's some of his posts on my Discord since that session. Every encounter I make, I have to decide if I want Prismatic Wall to win it, or think about how I can still play and what will work. No spell has caused as much GM headache as Prismatic Wall in his campaign. I spend more time prepping thinking, how would ranged fighters do in this combat than I do on anything except, what will Prismatic Wall do to this encounter? Notice he doesn't mention True Polymorph there. And the reason is because True Polymorph didn't just win any encounter. It was good, but it wasn't game-breaking. Prismatic Wall was game-breaking when I used it. It just shut down his enemy. He couldn't hurt us. We could just wreck him. And I've seen the same thing in my own games. I gave an example in that video, in fact. So is True Polymorph a powerful spell? Absolutely. Is True Polymorph versatile? Definitely. Is True Polymorph as powerful as Prismatic Wall? I don't think I would go that far. Which means that, as far as I'm concerned, Prismatic Wall is still the number one contender for being more powerful than Wish. True Polymorph might be more powerful than Wish too, but it's not the most powerful spell in D&D. Which leaves me for one more contender, in addition to Wish, that might be the most powerful spell in D&D. And I will cover that in my next video in the series, whenever that is. And if you are still watching this video, then it is you who is the actual Beholder. Thanks so much. And until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.